Welcome to Lumient Live. I'm your host, Mark Ackroyd. Lumient Live is the podcast for advice professionals that believe in a values-based advice experience, but still have that question, how does it all work? We connect listeners with other advice professionals to hear best practice client stories or business examples and lift the lid on how they made it happen. Now, on to today's episode. G'day and welcome to another episode of Lumient Live, a really special episode today. We're joined by the CEO of behavioural science company Syntoniq, Brian Pasalich. How are you, mate? Good to have you here.
Doing well. How about you? It's excited to be here. I mean, it's basically couldn't be any further apart here in Seattle, but really excited to be with you today. So, and you know, I love it. Everybody butchers my name, so it's Pasalich, but I had to wait to let you, so I can actually give a shit on live.
Yeah.
So,
hey, I'm glad I could just follow suit and be part of the script. So. It's the least I could do for you, man. I think you're our first guest from Seattle too. So breaking new ground.
Nice. We're reaching global now. Huh?
So. Hey, that's the power of Lumient Live, mate. I know we've spoken about this. You sent through a bit of a bio, and I love doing a bit of a bio for our people. And you know, I had a look at it. I tried to cut it down. And I thought, you know what, reading this, and I'm sure the audience is going to get a kick out of it, I will not do it justice if I try to paraphrase. So I'm going to read this out because I think it's one of the better bios I've seen. Certainly put a smile on my face as I read it. So let me share it with the audience, and then we'll get into knowing a little bit more about you and the amazing work you do. So for those of you that don't know Brian Pasalich, did I get that right this time?
Love it. Got it. Spot on.
Awesome. Has the privilege of supporting the Syntoniq team and leading their mission to improve client outcomes through behavioral science as Chief Executive Officer. And this is my favorite bit, everyone. But the team prefers to call him the Croatian Yoda, 10 times the size of the Jedi Master, but equally childlike in curiosity and generous with wisdom. Mate, I love that. That is so good. He has coached, trained, and supported more than 1,000 financial advisors, earning top advisor retention leader and top recruiter awards multiple times in a row. Additionally, he serves as a senior mentor with Founder Institute, NYC, Seattle, and Silicon Valley, where he's mentored more than 20 cohorts and 300 founders during the past 8 years. Once again, I thought about not sharing this bit, but fascinating, mate, and goes to show the type of quality individual you are. Before he entered the world of finance, Brian served as a flight paramedic with the US Army Reserve and 2 SWAT teams. Unreal. Outside of the office, Brian is passionate about giving back and fighting for the good side. He regularly leads financial literacy workshops and stays active in LGBT issues by serving on the board of Marriage Equality USA and other nonprofits. Brian's desire to bring the best out of everyone and everything is summed up by his motto, don't get caught up in how it looks, have it turn out. Brian, an amazing bio, goes to show who you are as a human being, not only as a leader. We are excited to have you on. Tell us a bit about yourself that's not in the bio, mate, and tell us a bit about your work.
Boy, other than the fact that, that was a long one. And, it's my marketing team and my copywriter. They don't let me write it because I'm just like, works here, does this, and that's it. And I'm good. Everybody says everybody's favorite subject is themselves, but I'm like, mine's the opposite. It's the one thing, the childlike curiosity they got right in the sense that I remember as a kid, my dad used to, be the one person out of everybody that when I'd ask a question, he'd ask one back. Most parents nowadays were like, stop asking. And so we quit asking and then we start talking. I never grew out of it, and it drives my partner nuts because I know more about my mother-in-law than he does. But I get told I'm nosy, but I'd like to think of it as curious. And that to me has like been the one thing that's carried on from being a medic all the way through to today. And I love that aspect of it. And so, the funny part was that don't get caught up in how it looks, have it turn out. It only took me about a decade to learn that. So being a type A, probably ×5 driver, where it's one of those things, there's always the right way. And it wasn't until I went through a few different coaching programs that I realized like, we get so caught up, and I think why this is important for today's conversation, especially when it comes to values, right, is we get so caught up in how it has to look. and we all have our own opinions. And, and it's like the best thing I can say now at 48 is I've learned that I probably made more mistakes than most, and I'm cool with it. I've forgotten more than most. I'm actually cool with going into a meeting not knowing a damn thing. And it actually serves as an advantage, right? Because if I always, walk into a meeting and know this is it, I've got the best answer for everything, I quit listening, right? And it doesn't, and I mean this with all respect for all the advisors and everyone listening, it doesn't matter what we think. We're last on the list. Our role really should be is to help our clients to uncover what it is that they truly want, because most of them don't. And that's the whole reason Syntoniq exists. We like to say that, financial services companies, they can't truly understand their clients because clients don't truly understand themselves. We get so caught up in this damn thing day to day. What we see on TV media is brilliant as hell. It's shoving the right product in front of us at the right time, where that keeping up with the Joneses, at least that's what we use here in the States. I don't know what you guys use there, but that's such
it's
a
equally relevant here.
Okay. But while we're having the conversation, I can order something from Amazon, and before we're done with the conversation, it's at my doorstep, right? And so these things all get caught away. And this is one of the biggest things that I think for me throughout my career, I remember when I first started, I don't know if you remember Bacharach's value-based selling.
I do.
But you heard some of the other, individuals talk about. I read that thing like the Bible. That was my number one book, and it's funny. This was my number two book, Goals by Brian Tracy. It's actually written for guys because it's simple. It's got like a little bit of text with some step-by-steps and then a blank page. So it's actually something that guys can follow pretty well. But it's really getting clear around what it is that we want, right? That's what it really centers around. And so one of the big things that I always like to look at is it's okay to, excuse my language, F it up, if you will, and get messy, right? That's where growth happens. And I think this is the one thing as a profession we've done a shit job as a whole, because we're so used to being the advisor. So when a client comes to us, they sit in front of us, they're looking to us as almost in that parent-child relationship. They're looking from that mindset of, all right, you got all the answers, Mark, you can figure it out. Help me, do whatever that may be. And they also, we want to look good, right? That's the big thing. And, especially here in the States, we're really good at that. I used to dress really nicely, wear a lot of good stuff. Now it's like, you catch me in Uniqlo t-shirts and I'm perfectly happy in my flip-flop. So, it is. I was a victim of that for the first 35 years. But it's like that looking good, being right, it prevents us from really trying to understand what it is that we want, right? And that's really what this whole thing boils down to. And it's not about getting it right. It's about headed in the right direction, that journey, right? And so, that for me really centers around that. Don't get caught up on how it looks to have it turn out. That goes for both the advisor and the client. There's most of us look, there's a door behind me. We say, all right, what's the one way to get through the door? It's the fastest way, right? Bullshit. Excuse my language again. You can edit this out later.
You're okay. You are in a safe space.
All right, good. All right. Oh, that's good. All right, good. But for me, there could be a million ways through that door. As long as you get through the damn door, that's what matters. In the way that works for you. Is it the most efficient? Maybe not. But does it work for you? That's your journey. It's not mine. And so I think that's really the biggest thing in this, values conversation today that I want to start with, because I feel we missed that point, right? And we're really good at talking, as you can see. I know this is funny because now I'm doing a lot of it. It's funny. I get uncomfortable when I start talking too much because I'm like, shit, I'm talking too much. I got to stop. But I actually love asking questions and just shut the hell up and listen. And with no understanding or thought around where the conversation is going to go. Kind of like today. I mean, I know we had a brief conversation a little bit. I have no idea where this is going to go. I'm actually excited about it, not trying to control it. So, with that, I'll shut up now.
I'm all for it. Those that are watching us on the YouTube will probably just see me beaming the entire time you're talking. Those listening through our audio channels, trust me when I say I've smiled that entire time Brian's talking. And Brian, on behalf of the community listening, please, you're on the pedestal today. Please keep talking. That's why we've got you here today. I'll take the break from asking the questions. That's my gig. We want to hear everything about you. And there's so much in what you've just said that I think resonate with our audience. For everyone listening at home, if you haven't picked up on it, buckle up. We're in for a wild ride of this conversation. Both Brian and I don't really know where we're going to go. Brian's got a ton of expertise and insight, and I'm going to ask questions on our audience behalf. So Brian, we've spoken. Yeah, we did do a bit of a pre-meeting around this, and there's probably some things that we can go through, and naturally we'll cover it off in the scope of the podcast. But just in that original sort of speech or sort of insight that you shared, there's probably four key things I took out of that. We have a really great habit of quitting listening because we're waiting to speak as an advice community. We are afraid to get messy because if we don't come off as polished or we don't come off as having the right answer, we ruin the third thing, which is that parent-child relationship that we sort of know exists, but I think we're getting to a point as an industry we're appropriately challenging it, right? Because whilst it might start as parent-child, certainly a lot of ours in our community, advisors that is, are starting to see that co-creation relationship, that power under or power side by side type relationship is the way advice needs to work. So I think that's really interesting. And your analogy about getting out the door, so favoriting the journey over the outcome. I think that's a really pertinent point for everyone here. So let's get into all of those as well as everything else. But why is it that you think we're afraid of getting messy and listening? What's going on there in part of the research and stuff that you see in the industry?
I mean, I think all in all, right? From the time we look at school, it's funny. I had the privilege of growing up between Croatia and the U.S., and so I got a chance to see different educational styles. And I will say, at least here in the U.S., we used to be really good about when you get something wrong, ask why. And I'm a microbiology major, dropped out of my first year of med school. So it's like I'm that science mind in everything I do. But when science is imperfect, obviously, as we found here with COVID and all the different stuff, and we're learning and growing, right? But it's like that's where that curiosity always stays. Whereas most every other subject that we study, whether it's in high school or in college, it's all about you got to get it right. If you don't get it right, it's not okay. Here's why or understand. It's just so critical thought isn't there. It's that image base, right? Okay, here's the right answer. Okay, next, move on. And I also think a lot of it is this too. What
The phone.
30 years ago, 20 years ago, it was something where. Oh, that's right. Yeah, for those listening.
Yeah, for those listening, when Brian's saying this, he's holding up his iPhone. Yeah.
Broke the thing on my iPhone that I can't stand half the time yet. I'm stuck on it. But the thing I will say is, it's just we want to look good, right? That's human nature. I mean, there's nothing wrong with it. But we don't give ourselves, our spouses, partners, family, whomever, permission to get it wrong. And I think that needs to happen a little bit more. When you look at what we've done as a company, the financial services industry, for marketing, it's all about trust, right? Why us, right? The problem is it's pushing trust this way. Well, who's helping the client build trust and confidence in themselves? You could have this gold-plated, AAA rated, everything there, but if the client doesn't trust themselves, or have the confidence in themselves to take action, it doesn't matter. And we focus so much as an industry as pushing trust towards them instead of helping them to build trust in themselves. And I think that's where it really starts. And, every publication, everything you read, it's all about returns. It's all about getting it right. All this, it's just, that's what's happening. Now, this thing, again, the phone, it pushes stuff. And again, you don't want to look bad, and that's one of the things. And I think it takes a shift, and we're slowly starting to get better at it as an industry, but we still have a long way to go. I mean, that's one of the things, first things I did with my teams years ago. I mean, this was in 2005, 6. I got rid of suit and tie. And I know people listening might think I'm crazy, but that was that barrier that kind of felt like you're sitting in front of the principal's office. And so it created that barrier. So remove that barrier, little things like that. Coming in with, there's no financial charts or anything up on the wall. We actually had one of my advisors' dads was an amazing artist who put his artwork up, things like that just kind of make someone feel comfortable in their environment. And it's, if we see these returns up on the wall, things like that, oh shoot, I'm not getting that, or whatever it may be. But anything that can remove any attempt to create a judgment, right? And that's one of the biggest things I think. We all have judgments. Look, I'm Croatian. There's a judgment times 100 in there somewhere. I've learned how to shift out of it and control it, where it's like, look, our first meeting, we sit down. I don't know shit. It's not about me. I don't like, no clue where the journey's going, other than I'm going to ask the questions in the hope that we can work together to figure this out, And I think that's a big thing. done a lot of studies with our clients, and we found that, we usually have this like do it for me and the do it yourselfers, right? Do it yourselfers are the robos, the well techs, and that the do it for me is working with the RAs or the advisory side of things. And what we found, the majority of the population actually wants to do it together, DIT, right? So it's like replacing DIY with DIT. And, do it together means a collaborative approach where we work on the same footing. This is a team effort, redefining engagement, really just sitting down. And my job is to help to understand what it is that you want when you don't even know what you want, right? I don't know what you want either, but if I ask the questions in the right way, I think we're going to get there. And guess what? So what? We get up and get it wrong. That's okay. As long as we, don't focus so much on the goal, let's enjoy the journey. And what can we learn in that journey? And I think that's a big thing. I talk a lot about explore versus destination. Everything we do in planning, destination, right? We got to put it into e-money or whatever planning tool we're using. We got to have that destination. Well, let's play around with explore. Now, if we're 50 and we haven't saved the damn thing, yeah, we got a shorter distance to explore, but let's play around and figure out what that destination is, right? So, instead of that old saying, you're climbing up the wrong ladder of success, that's reality, right? And so how do we mitigate some of that and just keep it simple? And I think one of the easiest things for me is, it was an exercise I went through 15 years ago. It was a group coaching program where they literally scream at you, what do you want? What do you want? What do you want? And it's interesting to hear, most of us don't think about it. And it's annoying as hell, I will tell you, when it's there in your face, but at the same time, it actually gets you thinking. And we used to say the easiest thing, right? Because we just want to get someone to shut the hell up and move on.
Stop yelling in my face, man.
Exactly, right? Clients do that too. Just, you know what, I'm going to tell you what you want to hear so we can move on and just make money because that's what you do and we're good. We're not in reality. That's the problem. That's where the disconnect starts, right? And so then it all of a sudden becomes the conversation about the returns, which we're never going to win every day. And so it's really getting past that surface. And I like to say, call BS, and you call it from a position of integrity, meaning I'm not saying, you know what, Mark, you're full of shit, here's the problem, but it's calling BS. Let's say one of your values is family. The first question I'm going to ask, that's great. When's the last time you saw your mom? When's the last time you called your dad? And it's like, oh, it's been 3 months, 4 months. Okay, that's great. Is that a value you want? But that's not one you're in today. And I want you to push back against me. Now, my practice and how I ran things was very different. And I want to show you, there's this chart and it's a simple chart. So this is something I grew up with, right? So most advisors, first meeting, we learn a little bit about them. Second meeting, we learn a little bit more. And by the third, they finally open up to us. I've always approached it here. I'm going to make the first meeting all about learning all the stuff I can. So we're filling in the gaps. So by the third, we're ready to implement and take action. And I think that is missing a lot of times. And so my first meeting, it is really about you. I kind of set the stage in the framework from which we play. But the rest of the time, it's understanding what it is that you really want, what's keeping you up at night, what are your vision, values, and goals, and just focusing on that, not the monetary side. Because everybody tries to put a dollar number to it. There's not a goal that you can accomplish without money. And I always challenge people because, whether you're a Buddhist monk or whatever, you need money. If you're doing yoga, you need money. And so instead of making it about the money, let's make it about the life journey, and let's make it about your purpose and what gets you excited. So let's focus on that. So that's one of those things about calling BS and confronting without being confrontational, right? If I say you're full of shit and I'm pointing a finger, that's confrontational. If I call BS on it and say, all right, you say family is your biggest value, but you haven't called mom in 6 months, help me understand where the disconnect is. And I'm comfortable making someone uncomfortable, if that makes sense, because it's not about me. It's about helping you to really understand you. And most of us don't even take that time. We talk a lot about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, the self-actualization, all that. We don't even spend the time on that, right? And so that's what I'm not trying to take someone down to that true altruistic thing, but I'm trying to get to that clear, real understanding, because only when I can meet, we all say we meet them where they are, but most of us meet them where their balance sheet is or what they tell us. Yeah. We really don't meet them where they are. And that's the biggest thing about getting to their core values. It starts that conversation and really dig into that. And so that's such a big thing. And I think the biggest thing I will say, because I really screw this up all the time, is relating. We're so big about relating. And so I brought a couple props just because, since you're in Australia and I'm here.
Hey, Fremantle Dockers jersey. Nice. And one of the And your Australian passport, one of the OG Fremantle Dockers jerseys too. Like we're talking, if you let me AFL nerd out here, we're talking Justin Longmuir days, Peter Bell days, Troy McManus days. Yeah, you're in safe company here.
There we go.
Now, for our
Okay.
US listeners, they would have tuned out there and I probably lost half our audience. But you know what? For all our Australian
Exactly.
listeners, I'm okay with that. That's cool. I like it. I love that you've got a footy jersey there.
And the reason I brought that up, because relating, right? This is what we love to do. I find out you're from Australia, next thing I know, well, shit, I've got Australian citizenship. Here's the past, Well, the problem is we do that a lot in life too, right? I remember when we first met, we like to share, hey, we got this in common, that in common, right? Hey, the GNR poster behind. These are the things we like to do because instinctively that's human nature, right? And we want to relate. And the biggest thing is when you're making this conversation about the client in a client meeting, I leave that out. And here's why, because, and I'm the most guilty of it, because that child in me comes out to the top, and it's like, oh, you like that? I like that too. And I start asking questions about it. The problem is if we're good at what we do and we can enroll people, in other words, get them trapped into what we're up to, which most guys and girls that are in, guys and ladies, so sorry, that are in this, we're good salespeople, right? So we can roll in anybody in anything. Is it ends up hijacking the conversation when you relate to them. And that's one of the things, and when in that values conversation, it's not about me, it's not about what I think, it's not about anything. So I literally go in there with a blank slate. And that's something the older I get, it gets a lot easier to do, because this thing really is a blank slate. I'm like, wait, what are we talking about? But that's really where it starts. And later when we're grabbing a coffee or a beer, we can talk about all that shit, right? But right now in the moment, that's where, it's not about me, not about what I think. And I think that's a key thing that we struggle with, because we see a new prospect or a client sitting in our desk or on a Zoom screen, and we're like, I want to build that connection. There's actually a lot of studies to show that trust and relatedness doesn't have anything to do with results, right? In other words, if someone really likes you on a personal level, it doesn't impact the level of business that they're going to do with you. And there's actually some recent studies that show that it does the adverse. Clients aren't looking for someone that's likable. They're looking for someone that has impact, right? And I always used to use that. I call it likability and impact scale, right? And give you a case. One of my advisors was chair of the frat group for like enrollment. This guy was the most likable guy ever, but he was also one of the bigger partiers ever. He was an extremely likable guy. Everybody loved him. Didn't have impact, right? My top advisor in my office, I remember he scored a 2 out of 20 on the career profile test when I hired him. And I was teasing him. I'm like, Andrew, you're going to have to develop a personality. Dead face. He goes, I can do that. And I'm like, I knew right there he had it. And he had impact. He was smart. He just was an awkward guy in a fun way. He's actually my best friend today. But he was my top advisor. And it just goes to prove that we focus so much on relationship building and likability. And yes, relationship building is key. But what I'm getting at here is that impact means if I can help you to understand you and what really is important to you and your family, and that's the piece where it's like, and ask the questions that in a way will make you uncomfortable. If they don't, I'm doing something wrong, because getting messy and uncomfortable is where growth happens, right? And that's the piece, is you got to give them permission to get it wrong, to F it up. You've got to be okay with it. And it's like, let's figure this out. Now, I do that more of the psychological side of things, and that's one of the things that, like, as soon as I got into wealth management, I started taking psychology classes at the uni, because that was important to me. It's like, how can I get better at understanding and thinking? And so that's what I will say, and I think if we can focus on that and just gain some clarity around that, it's actually, the best part is it's easy. We don't have to, when you have to have all the answers, you're like, oh shit, I hope I don't forget. When you don't have to have anything, it's just ask a question. You can really let that go, and wherever it goes, just ask another clarifying question. The goal is to just get them headed in that direction, right? So we can start to dial that in. But I think that's one of the biggest things for me, because I've done both, and I've, like I said, I've probably effed up more than anyone else in the sense over the last 20 plus years with my team, with myself, and my clients. But I've never lost a client to another advisor for a simple reason. I actually understand them, and I actually do love my clients. And if I didn't like somebody, we didn't click, I actually didn't work with them. I'd probably hand them over to one of my other team. But for me, it's that's what it's about. So I'll shut up now, because I know I threw a bunch of
hey, That is okay. We love your passion. I was thinking about it as you were talking. You know, this for our audience is that shot in the arm of purpose, why you do this. You know, that little bit of an energy kick. So please keep going. Thanks for tuning in to part one of our interview with Brian Pasalich, CEO of Syntoniq. If you really enjoyed it, we'd love if you could hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on any of our upcoming episodes. Stay tuned for part two.